The strangest love story in the world is the one that brought together the genius musician and the wealthy widow, where the most important conditions of this love were that they never meet or see each other so that love would remain glowing. Despite this strange condition, love continued for 13 years and was becoming more intense every day through fiery letters that reached 1,200 letters. It is the story of the genius musician Tchaikovsky, 1840 to 1893, the author of the masterpieces Swan Lake, The Nutcracker and Sleeping Beauty, with Mrs. Nadezhda and the very wealthy widow who was fond of music and who tended to isolation to the point that she did not attend her daughter's weddings. The relationship began with correspondence and Mrs. Nadezhda's great admiration for his art, and saw in his music an inner longing that revived her soul. She was 45 years old, beautiful, and had a huge fortune. When she learned of his poor financial situation, she asked him to write her some pieces, and she used to send him large sums of money. Then the admiration turned into love, and she lived surrounded by a picture that she contemplates as if it were sacred, and the letters between them continued with great respect and affection at first. Nadezhda says, "The letters of this composer help me bear the sorrows of life." Then a sweeping love ignited between them, but the strange thing is that Mrs. Nadezhda stipulated that she not meet him or see him, and he not see her, so that the flame of love between them would not die out. She wrote to him that the more I love your music, the more my fear of meeting you increases. She began inviting him to stay in one of her palaces. Then she invited him to stay in her house in Moscow. Tchaikovsky entered a palace of marble, crystal, and luxurious paintings. In the room designated for him, he found everything he needed: a piano, his favorite cigarettes, the medicine he took before sleeping, and music sheets. The genius musician was affected by this care to the point of crying. The beloved soon invited him to spend several weeks near her, but on the condition that he would not see her according to their previous agreement. She rented him a villa 500 meters away from her palace, where she lived with her entourage and children. Tchaikovsky found everything, as usual, prepared with great care. Immediately, letters began to be sent between the two houses, carried by the chief servants. She wrote to him, "The feeling of your presence near me is a great happiness that I cannot express in words." According to the agreement, she informed him of her departure times so that they would not meet on the road. She would pass every day at 11 in the morning in front of the villa where the artist lived, and if he happened to be looking out the window, he would turn his head, fleeing inward. Then the lady took the final step and invited him the following summer to live in the same palace where she lived, while he lived in a quiet dwelling at the end of the garden. She made his room like a shrine and hung a picture surrounded by flowers in it. As usual, the letters between the two began. She wrote to him, "How happy I am to feel that you are with me. It is not love, it is a kind of worship." In the midst of his enthusiasm and happiness, the artist began writing the new opera, The Virgin of Ozilian, and whenever he sent her what he wrote, she received it as if it came from heaven. Although they lived in the same palace, they agreed on the times of their departure so as to avoid any meeting and falling into the forbidden according to their agreement. Despite all this, it happened one day that Lady Nadezhda's carriage was passing the palace about an hour late from its appointed time, and the artist was not aware of this sudden delay. And when he went out, he was surprised by Lady Nadezhda's carriage advancing towards him while she was inside it. The man did not find any chance to escape, and their eyes met for the first time after 13 years of letters and passionate love. He was overcome with great agitation and bowed his head in greeting. She was no less aggravated, so she nodded in return. It took a moment, then she ordered her driver to continue driving. Tchaikovsky quickly wrote to her apologizing, but she wrote back, "I apologize for meeting you even though I am extremely happy. For this reason, I thank the strange coincidence that allowed us to meet in this way. You made me feel the reality of your presence among us. I was so happy after seeing you that I could not hold back my tears. Tchaikovsky's success became dazzling. His compositions brought him a lot of money, and the audience rushed to the theater carrying him on their shoulders after the piece, The Uzelian Virgin. The Tsar of Russia bestowed upon him the Order of Saint. Vladimir and all of Europe looked forward to receiving him and his music. In April 1891, he was invited to tour America and was honored with indescribable celebrations. A few days later, he received a letter from her son-in-law telling him that his mother-in-law was ill and that she would no longer be able to write to him, as she had contracted tuberculosis and was no longer able to write. It was a great shock to Tchaikovsky, who was 51 years old. He said, "I believed that the earth would shake from under my feet before Nadezhda's feelings turned away from me, but this is what happened. My trust in people has gone, and my trust in the whole world has been turned upside down." This strange ending had a profound effect on the last pieces of the great artist, the Sad Symphony, which spoke of despair, so much so that critics said that it was the greatest musical work that expressed sadness in all times and places. On October 3, 1893, and only 4 days after playing the symphony, the artist felt pain in his stomach and began to twist in his bed, calling out to death and urging it on, while he was delirious in despair. "Nadezhda! Nadezhda! Come, come!" And he opened his eyes and closed them forever without seeing her. 2 months after his death, his beloved died as well. She could not bear to live without him, and the curtain fell on the strangest love story in the world.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.